Hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here. Recently I've began to produce the first ever comprehensive series of videos on YouTube covering the history of the Double Dragon franchise. The brand which popularised the two-player cooperative beat-em-up genre has many games under its belt, and as of today so many games have been released over the years that many people have simply lost track. For this reason, I thought it would probably be wise to slowly go back and look at all of them, covering each mainline game in chronological order of release. In this video, we shall be looking at 1994's Double Dragon 5, a game that was a complete departure from everything we knew and loved about the series. Within this content, we shall be exploring why this bold move was made, how this game handles, and most importantly, why this game disappointed so many. Is this game even worse than Double Dragon 3? Let's find out. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the mad story of Double Dragon 5, a game that was a total disgrace. Yeah! The Double Dragon series, a franchise that has certainly had manic highs and lows. Yoshihito Kishimoto's original 1987 game established the two-player beat-em-up genre, captivating arcade gamers everywhere. Despite its innovations though, the game suffered from a lot of slowdown, but this problem was soon ironed out with the release of Double Dragon 2 the following year. The refinement of this game would inspire a whole generation of imitators, with Final Fight, Golden Axe and Turtles arcade games all hitting the market by 1989. By 1990, the arcade would receive Double Dragon 3, a game that many people label as the first misstep in the series. The game that carries the subheading The Rosetta Stone was lambasted for being a very different product to what came before it. The game was not developed by Kishimoto in-house at Technos, but instead outsourced to East Technology, resulting in a game that looked completely graphically different to the others, and more annoyingly, a greedy pay-to-win mechanic, where players could make their fighters stronger by using real-world money within an in-game shop. The public rejected this preposterous idea, as very few people were dumb enough to want to pay to win at a game. In conjunction with all of these arcade games, there were various home ports of these games across a number of formats. Whilst the NES would receive more unique bespoke ports due to the system's high sales numbers, in fact Double Dragon 3 would be a completely different game altogether on the hardware, even receiving its own subheading, The Sacred Stones. Despite it being arguably better than the arcade game, it still had its own problems, leading to the game becoming a commercial failure. The fourth chapter in the Double Dragon series would see changes after the failings of the last games. The next entry, titled Super Double Dragon, would be a console exclusive, which made logical sense in late 1990, considering the arcade industry was dwindling. This 16-bit title for the Super Nintendo showed promise in development, especially under the leadership of Muneki Ebenuma, a man who had joined Technos in the first place due to his love of Double Dragon. As identified from the vast amount of comments on my Super Double Dragon video praising the game, even today the game still has a fan base, with some people even proclaiming it as their favourite Double Dragon game of all time. The game provides appeal by being graphically faithful to the early Double Dragon games, and builds on the gameplay by including an impressive grabbing and blocking system. Whilst the game certainly has its upside, it's still a bit of an embarrassment for Technos, as due to time constraints, the game was released before it was even finished, meaning the game features no intro, ending or cutscenes, and the title sold terribly as it came out on the Super Nintendo within a similar time frame to Street Fighter 2. Like Double Dragon, 4 years previously, Street Fighter 2 was also a genre-defining game, captivating consumers, presenting fighting in an exciting new way, resulting in many players forgetting all about Double Dragon. Ironically, Street Fighter 2 would also rejuvenate the arcade industry, the field that Double Dragon had just left behind. 2 years later, in 1993, we would get a further 2 games featuring the Lee brothers. The first of these would be Battletoads Double Dragon, produced by Rare here in the UK. To be fair, this is a very decent game that presented a unique premise that excited players. But to be honest, this is more of a Battletoads game that simply has the cast of Double Dragon as guest characters, rather than being anything else. Gameplay wise, this is certainly a good Battletoads game, but again, to re-emphasise, very different from Double Dragon. The other Double Dragon game released that year was a Game Gear title known as Double Dragon The Revenge of Billy Lee. The game focuses around Billy pursuing a gang known as the Dragon Lords, who at the beginning of the game's plot are thought to have murdered Jimmy. We will cover this one soon in depth, but I'm going to save it for an episode of Handhelds Around the World. This finally brings us to 1994 and the release of Double Dragon 5. Name-wise, even at the time the game's title was a bit confusing, as there was no Double Dragon 4. But I guess with Super Double Dragon existing, I guess Double Dragon 5 kind of made sense, since it would be the 5th different Double Dragon game to appear on Nintendo hardware. This was the logic that gamers were forced to go with for years, until 2017 when Arc System Works cocked up the chronology further by releasing a retro game made in the style of the NES classics, resulting in Double Dragon having one of the most chronologically irritating series in all of gaming history. As of 1993, Technos Japan had begun to heavily license out their Double Dragon brand. We have already mentioned Rare's Battletoads Double Dragon, distributed by Trade West, along with Double Dragon The Revenge of Billy Lee, both published and distributed by Virgin Interactive. The same year would also see the birth of an animated TV series, a collaborative American-Canadian-Italian project produced by Dick Animation City, Bobot Entertainment, and Italian studio Retitalia SPA. Yeah. The existence of this Dick show is important in today's tale, as in an insane move, Double Dragon 5 would be based on this very television show. The subheading for Double Dragon 5 and the first episode in this series would even share the same name, The Shadow Falls. Like all of these other Double Dragon projects we have just mentioned, Technos had nothing to do with Double Dragon 5, and instead the game would be an American title. Like some of its predecessors, it was published by Trade West, but this time developed by Leyland Interactive Media. As you can see, this US developed game is dramatically different from every Double Dragon game that came before it. The side-scrolling beat-em-up formula that made the franchise so famous is absent, and in its place is a standard fighting game affair. With regards to why such a decision was made, it is clear and transparent as to why the Americans felt such a change to Double Dragon would be favourable. As discussed earlier in the video, Street Fighter II took over the world in 1991, and since the release of that game, other fighting franchises have found success too, including Mortal Kombat, an American-produced franchise. Moving Billy and Jimmy to a game of this format seemed to make sense, as games of this style had proven to print money in the recent past, and continue to turn a lot of heads, with Street Fighter even receiving its own live-action movie that year. In fact, Double Dragon also pulled off the same stunt that year too, receiving a Hollywood film to call their own in 1994. The movie has nothing to do with Double Dragon 5 A Shadow Falls, but I promise we'll visit it in more detail within the next chapter I cover in Double Dragon history. Double Dragon 5 will be a game released to be available to play on all of the most popular consoles in the world. The Super Nintendo, the Sega Mega Drive, and of course the Atari Jaguar. Each of these versions of Shadow Falls features a different number of playable characters, with 12 being the highest number of characters who appeared in the game. We'll discuss these fighters in more detail shortly, but first let's touch on the mechanics of this title. Like many fighters, Shadow Falls takes advantage of the Super Nintendo 6-button layout, allowing for weak, medium and strong punches and kicks to be mapped to a button each, and the same applies to the Jaguar version too. In the Mega Drive version's case, it takes advantage of the system's original 3-button controller. Weak, medium and strong attacks are mapped to the 3 buttons, and the start button can be used to toggle between punches and kicks. Pairing these buttons with the use of the console's directional pads obviously allows players to perform other moves too. Since the Americans wanted to use the Double Dragon brand to try and make Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat money, Shadow Falls would also somewhat imitate the fatality system by including finishing moves of its own, known as overkills. Basically, overkills result in losing characters having their own unique death animations when defeated by certain types of basic attacks. As we discuss the game's roster in a little more detail, we shall be discussing some of the special moves that each character can perform within the game. However, regardless of what moves each fighter can perform, it is of note that Double Dragon 5 does not feature the greatest of physics, leading to the game feeling somewhat clunky and vastly inferior to the games it tries to imitate so badly. So, with regards to the playable characters, we obviously have Billy and Jimmy Lee, the stars of the previous Double Dragon games. The best way to describe the use of the Lee brothers in Shadow Falls is as the Ryu and Ken of this game's roster. Like in many Street Fighter clones, these two characters can perform spin attacks, leaping uppercuts, and of course shoot projectile fireballs. Nothing innovative or new here. The rest of the playable cast are all known as the Shadow Warriors, and as mentioned earlier, many have been plucked straight from the animated TV show. The basic story of the show revolves around the brothers, who in the show were separated at birth. Billy was raised by an elderly martial artist known as the Oldest Dragon, and his brother Jimmy was raised by the evil Shadow Master as his second in command, the Shadow Boss. As a result, the Lee brothers oppose each other as adults, but when Jimmy is betrayed by the Shadow Master, he renounces his evil ways and joins his brother as a dragon warrior. The rest of the show features the brothers making a number of other allies in their war against the Shadow Master and his henchmen. The story of this show is loosely adapted from the NES version of the first Double Dragon game, which amusingly only allowed players to play as one Lee brother and positioned the other as evil due to technical limitations at the time that prevented the game from being a two-player cooperative experience. So it is pretty funny that this workaround that they were forced to include was still used as a plot in a TV show, and even more amusing that a further game was made based on that show. It's gone full circle. Anyway, with regards to the Shadow Warriors, the leader in the TV show known as the Shadow Master functions as this game's final boss. His ultimate goal is to cover the world in darkness and shadow. He has many powers which include shapeshifting and teleporting, plus can also use electrical and flame-based projectiles. The other boss character for this game is a fighter known as Dominique, who is not from a children's television program. According to the game's manual, she is a dangerous dominatrix with a whip and knives at the tips of her high heels. Dominique is the personal bodyguard of the Shadow Master, but I guess they included dominatrixes in every beat-em-up ever, so I guess why not include one in Double Dragon 5 too? Continuity. From the TV show we also have Jawbreaker, the #1 master of Chu Zitsu, who is a notable fighter for having 3 different projectile attacks. Basically, it is all rather excessive, just like the man's appetite. We then have Icepick, a cyborg and computer expert. Icepick's body is entirely made of solid crystal, which gives him an Iceman-like appearance. He fights using a sword and dagger with ice powers, essentially making him this game's answer to Sub-Zero. Next up, also from the TV show, we have Sickle, who mainly has blade-based attacks, which is pretty obvious considering he is a shadow warrior who specialises in disguises and is armed with 2 large red sickles. Next from the television, Trigger Happy is playable, a large purple-skinned shadow warrior who uses a hand-mounted directed energy blaster. Like the name suggests, Trigger Happy has multiple projectiles that he can use to his advantage. Countdown has some pretty cool abilities, including being able to turn into a rocket. He is a robotically enhanced cyborg. He attacks with shoulder-mounted rocket blasters and laser vision. In the TV show, he was manipulated into betraying the Shadow Master and was punished for his treason. Countdown fights for his own survival now. The rest of the roster were not included in the show and remain unique to the game. Out of these remaining fighters we have Bones, an undead skeleton resurrected by the Shadow Master, who is influenced by rock and roll and has a tattoo of a cobra on his forehead. He wields a laser rifle. We have Blade, a French cuisine expert and hired mercenary of the Shadow Warriors, and his weapons are crimson blades and his gauntlets. And then we have Sekka, a shameless rip-off of the most popular females from the fighting game genre. Aesthetically, she has the exact same look as the likes of Mileena and Kitana from Mortal Kombat, but has a Chun-Li-like moveset, even being able to perform the spinning bird kick. After shameless, eh? With regards to this roster, in the Super Nintendo and Mega Drive versions of the game, players start off with a playable roster of 10 fighters, but can play as the 2 boss fighters using codes. Ridiculously, despite the Atari Jaguar being a significantly more powerful console than the Super Nintendo and Mega Drive, less effort was put into the Jaguar version of the title, leaving it somewhat unfinished, meaning 3 characters would be left missing. This meant Dominique needed to be moved into a main character selection spot. The reason the Jaguar version is different to the other versions is because that version was not made by Leyland Interactive like the others, but instead ported by Telegames. Telegames was known for supporting not just modern game systems, but also classic game systems, after they'd been abandoned by manufacturers. For example, by 1997, Telegames was the Atari Jaguar's only software publisher, and continued to publish for the system up through to 1998. Madness, eh? One thing we have still not touched upon yet though, which I guess is also worth mentioning, is this title's modes of play. We have Tournament, which basically functions as the game's arcade mode, Versus Battles that allows 2 players to fight one another, Dossier mode where players can view character profiles, and bizarrely, Watch mode where a player can watch 2 computer-controlled characters fight it out. Most unique though, we have Quest mode where one competes in a series of plot-based battles. In Quest mode, the player can choose to play as one of the Lee brothers who are on a mission to stop the Shadow Master from releasing a plague, or play as one of the Shadow Warriors who must compete to replace the Shadow Master. The player can also alter the storyline by having Billy be the shadow boss while Jimmy is good. This mode is also unique in that the player can adjust the attributes of their own characters. After the release of this game, it would receive mainly negative reviews from critics. EGM would state, "If it wasn't for the title screen, I wouldn't have known it was a Double Dragon. This game is based on a kids' TV show instead of the much darker arcade game series. I didn't really get into this one. Maybe it was a lack of intensity. A good game for kids, but older players should pass." Superplayer would conclude the CPU plays a mean game, but generally the title is too shallow and lacking real fight. The graphics could be better too. GamePro would not roast the game too badly though, describing it as an unoriginal but competent Street Fighter II clone. As expected, the Jaguar version of the game would face even harsher criticism, with EGM commenting the Jaguar version has the same graphics and audio as the outdated SNES version and has far worse controls, with the use of the Jaguar's controller's number pad making it almost impossible to execute special attacks. GamePro would criticise the game for featuring headache-inducing music, and argued that it is unacceptable for a game which was graphically average even on 16-bit systems to be ported to a 64-bit system with no enhancements aside from the backgrounds. Reflecting on this game myself, the game offers a colourful cartoony affair that is somewhat faithful to the children's animated TV show. But who the bloody hell wanted a video game based on a bad animated show based on an at one point decent series of games? I understand many of the decisions that were made to try and make this game a success, such as emulating both Street Fighter II and Mortal Kombat, but absolutely nothing about this game delivers an experience in line with any of the Double Dragon games that came before it. Naming this game Double Dragon 5, in my opinion, is a total disgrace, as the game is nothing like Double Dragon, nor is it made by the company who made the classic games, or is it even made in the same bloody country. The game is a shameless American cash grab, trying to capitalise on the fighting game boom produced by Street Fighter II. However, this game firstly does little to stand out from other fighting games, and secondly attempts to ride off the back of previous Double Dragon game success by degrading the brand further, astoundingly to a lower place than ever before. And let's be honest, Double Dragon had some pretty terrible moments prior to this. Is Double Dragon 5 Shadow Falls the worst fighting game ever? Probably not, but the game is so removed from the rest of the franchise that this is a total disgrace. Imagine if after the Americans released an animated Mario Brothers show, that Nintendo just let a random American company release a Mario game based off of that animated show, to precede Super Mario World from an entirely different genre. Then just let them call it Super Mario Bros. 5. Well, that is basically what happened to poor Double Dragon, and I'm going to say it again, it's a total disgrace. So ladies and gentlemen, that was the mad story of Double Dragon 5. Let me know in the comments down below which game you would like to see me cover next on here. If you are new here, I would appreciate it if you liked, subscribed and hit that notification bell to view various videos covering gaming history which I release on this channel every week. If this is your first time here, why not check out my video covering Battletoads Double Dragon. These videos are funded in part in thanks to both my Patreon backers and those who have hit the join button here on YouTube and now become channel members. Those who most aid me working on these videos full time get them early before everyone else, as well as get to vote on polls for future content and more. So special thank yous go out to Sebastian Velez, Carl Johnson, The Murder of Crows, Heyo Paulo Lopez, Joseph Raznick, Doug Perkins, Corey Imar Sr., Lou Johnson, BXL Gotham, Rowan Dinch, Evan Border, Philip Mapp, Campbell Rambo 82, Azra Rowakai, Keith Ferguson, Dropkin Varela, Prince Knight, Michael Cullix, Ago, Jordan Durant, TOG Driver, Angel Light 75, and Lefia Swanson, Timothy W. Haskins II, Nick Daniels, Prince Asana, Carlos Domingos, Glennie Glenn, Daniel Daly, Computer Man, House of Ted, Sponge Matt B, Gary Pinkett, ECU Professor, Tony Tran, Aaron McNamara, Instant Gratification Monkey, Man Shovel, James Bishop, JB, Posty XL, Michael Hall, Wesley Sang He, Ted Stickles, Langston Miller, New, Brian Barry, Sir Lagney, Stephen Lewis, Sarah Powell, Vlamik Renee, Sarai, H. Al Sarai, Marvin Araliga, Chris Cool, Adrian Hannington, Bernard and G, Richard Stu Stewart, James McDonald, Crazy Yarl, Dan Van Dammit, Adam Castin, Louis Viant, John Bates, David Bowell, Chris Fisk, Paul Elliott, Me Machine Dean, Mike Bruno, Rick67, Antonio Rodriguez, Hans Christian, Craig Jenkins, Tom Elliott, Retroversing.com, Casey Wright, Since Spaces Zai, Andrew Bazansky, and all of my other patrons. Thank you for making series like this come to life. Yeah. Cheerio.